Everyone's got their Achilles heel. Friends, family, some colleagues have told me that mine is being adept at dishing it out, and I'm less adroit at taking it. I think that it has some accuracy to it. It's hard to take criticism, especially when it's more or less true. But if you learn to accept it, open yourself up to possibilities, and give things another whirl as an exercise in transforming that Achilles heel into a good rugged pair of boots and maybe even a pair of platform pumps, then you're making some progress, I think. Hello and welcome to the No Hair, All Heart podcast. I'm your host, Mookie Spitz. Still got no hair, still have tons of heart. And I'd like to address my Achilles heel in a way where I'm turning abuse into good use. I've been ranting on TikTok and Instagram, YouTube for about 10 months now, I think. I started on a whim about mid-December, I believe, end of 2024. And I grabbed my smartphone, I flipped the camera back onto myself, and instead of doing a photo selfie, I hit video, and I started to describe why I thought I got the prediction for the presidential election wrong. I thought Kamala Harris would defeat Donald Trump's deja vu. I was, of course, incorrect. I was riding largely on emotion. I felt, pretty much like James Carville did, that the American people could do better, that they knew better. After especially January 6th, it seemed inconceivable to me that Trump would win again. It just seemed so silly. At the same time, I had to acknowledge that his campaign, strictly from a marketing and communications point of view, which ironically enough is my specialty, was rocking it. You had Trump in the McDonald's drive-thru to highlight how Kamala might have lied about her job at McDonald's. You had Kamala calling the Trump messaging garbage, and then Trump showing up driving a garbage truck. Brilliant, brilliant stuff. You had Trump in Joe Rogan's little studio, sitting there on the stool right across from Joe, appealing to a segment of the population that not only the GOP had pretty much written off, but American politics is written off for decades as being ineffectual. Standard parlay, the traditional politico speak and strategy focused on more or less the 30-something and middle-aged moderate voter in swing states. You had white people, you had everyone else, and that's the way you divided the Red Sea, so to speak. Trump broke all the norms by taking advantage of what in retrospect seemed obvious from a technology point of view, too. And then you had folks like Charlie Kirk, the late Charlie Kirk, appealing in a very visceral but also cognitive way to millions of college-age people historically on liberal campuses and got them out to vote for the Donald. And then you had record numbers of minorities, especially black men, who flipped to Trump. Can't even say they flipped. They just went out to vote for Trump after seeing his shenanigans and after being promised that Make America Great Again Part 2 would make them great too. Well, he won. The rest is political, cultural history that continues to evolve and transform the whole nation in ways that everyone keeps saying is unprecedented, and it sure is, just like that interstellar object tumbling on the other side of the solar system right now, 3I Atlas. We're not quite sure what it is. And to be honest, we're not even quite sure what the Trump redux is, as to a certain extent, they're making it up as they go along. While at the same time, they're keeping promises made, promises kept in droves. So we're all dealing with the whiplash, whether you're on his side or not, of his campaign being translated into policy and effective action in ways that far exceed even his own advocates, the MAGA minions' wildest dreams. So here we go. Anyway, with all this on my mind, with the second Trump administration not even launching yet, this was in the in-between time between losing the election and Trump officially coming to power in January, I grabbed my phone and I bloviated a little bit. In retrospect, the lighting's all wrong. Some of the comments that I got on that video were creepy. And who is this dude? But I got some thoughtful ones, and the real takeaway that I got from that video is after I posted it, I had something like 200 or 300 views, which is really nothing on TikTok. And a few hours later, 400 views, 450 views, bunch of comments, likes, both sides of the political aisle. I got some personal insults, but then I got some thoughtful observations. And I was stunned. I was stunned because I had been mostly limiting my form of communication, my preferred form of communication, to really the written word, just manically typing hundreds of blog posts on Medium, that platform. And engagement on that platform has steadily declined over the years. I started in 2018. I wrote my first story. My first story, ironically enough, maybe predictably enough, was my most popular. That got 20,000 something reads and was exciting and got me going. But in comparison to engagement on social media, even if you're not ranting in a polarized and incendiary kind of way, simply by posting something, it doesn't even have to be any good. And you have this inverse logic on social media. Some of the shittiest stuff gets the highest engagement. Badly placed camera, captions that are automated and misspelled. Folks who are literally frothing at the mouth with no coherent point of view are garnering hundreds of thousands of engagements in terms of followers, likes, shares, comments. It's really something when you dive in there, either as a passive recipient of all this crap, and even more viscerally and dynamically if you participate. So this initial video got me a few hundred views and some engagement, exponentially larger than my average blog post as it came to be. And I was like, wow, I'm not really in it to win it as far as these metrics of engagement go. I'm not really sharing info to get a reaction per se. It always feels good. I'd be a liar not to deny that a thumbs up can go a long way. But being the introverted artist type in the Myers-Briggs, I believe I am the INTTP. Is that right? I am the architect. I am the introverted creator. I live in my head. I like making things up, making up worlds. I've got other strengths, of course, but that's a pretty good filter. So I'm like the man behind the curtain of Oz, not really caring if anyone's looking at the show. But this was a big, big boost. And after I unloaded like this, I just felt this tsunami erupt within me where all of this stuff had been bottled up. Even though the first video was awkward, I started to practice, and like any muscle memory, I got more and more comfortable in front of the camera. And it was kind of like a moving selfie, like a fourth dimensional selfie moving through time. And I liked myself doing this. And after I would rant anywhere from 30 seconds to 3, 4, sometimes 5 minutes, often with a single take. That was the other thing. I didn't really have to rehearse much. Just like I'm winging it with this podcast and most of my podcasts, I don't have a script. I don't even have an outline. I just kind of sit here in front of a hot mic and start going for it. And I've been doing pretty much the same thing on video. I've been doing it more succinctly just because of the modality and in shorter clips. But it's that same improvisational spark and just kind of rolling with it. And it built up momentum. And then I started experimenting. I did intros to my podcasts as kind of teasers. I had observations about relationships and family. Many thoughts and feelings that I had cooped up or expressed, again, exclusively through text, through words in blogs, started percolating back up. And I just started blasting everyone. I couldn't care less. And I actually lost followers on Instagram, which I've observed says something about the meta algorithm. And because of TikTok's superior algorithm, where it doesn't just blast all your followers pretty much indiscriminately as lowest hanging fruit, TikTok did a pretty good job of disseminating my videos onto the For You pages of people who had already displayed predilections for whatever the hell it was I was ranting about. And then I picked up a shitty microphone from Amazon, one of those plastic fake kids microphones for like $4.99. And then I found a pixelated backdrop of a stage with a closed red curtain. And then I figured out the app, the video editing app, so I could put myself, ranting, or in this case, telling stand-up jokes in front of that fake screen or that fake stage. And then I launched into a series of stand-up routines, of which I've got like, I think 40 or so. So I've got like an hour and a half of stand-up material on these platforms when you add it all up. And it became a huge experiment for me, and at the same time, an awesome catharsis to just let all this out. I had thought about doing this so many times. In the pandemic, it became almost acute, but it just didn't feel right. All it might have taken was for me to grab my camera and start going for it. And there was so much to talk about, and everyone was couch-bound. In retrospect, I might have built tremendous momentum starting during the pandemic, just ranting about my pandemic frustrations. But it just didn't feel right at the time. And whether you look back or whether you're in your life now and trying to predictively anticipate anything, you really just have to go with your feelings. And I guess my reward in ways for going with my feelings was now this tsunami of ranting on video and all this content coming out feels very natural. It's super duper fun, and I have a wealth of ideas. So those hundreds of blogs haven't gone to waste. I've repurposed them in the form of these brief video logs. And I've also launched podcasts, and that happened in February. So I'm bloviating online and video. And I'm like, why not do podcasts? And the podcast incentive came out of leaving these long voice messages for my sister, for friends, sharing like observations. And I realized that once I started on a topic, I would just keep going and going. I left 10, sometimes 15, a few times even 20, 22-minute voice messages on WhatsApp for friends and family. And then they started to joke that, hey, I got my podcast from Mookie. And I was like, hey, why don't I just set up a mic and learn the apps and DIY a podcast situation? And that's what I did. So I started 3 shows, No Hair, No Heart. This is one of them. This one's dedicated to relationships and feeling stuff, and it was also subordinated for about 6 weeks, I think, with the first half of my new novel where I did an author's audiobook reading of it. And I stopped because I wanted to do the full audiobook, and one thing's led to another, but I will record that audiobook as soon as I can. Maybe even continue with these podcast versions of it to have the entire book in both forms. Why not? But suffice to say, it cascaded from these quick video clips into the world of podcasts. And I don't know what the current tally is, but I think I'm at close to 200 podcasts, if you can believe it, since last February. That's season 1 of not only No Hair, All Heart, but then Bald and Bloviating, which is my bullshitting and political commentary and just the bucket that all the extras go into when it can't fit into relationships or business, which became my Bald Ambition podcast. Now, since then, I have not built up an enormous community of Mookie podcasting fans. And even on TikTok, I've got about 15,300 followers, but it's a broad segment. They followed me for all sorts of reasons to the point where I keep hovering around 15,300 because now I've reached the point where I'm pissing off as many people as I'm pleasing because my arguments are nuanced and they're nonpartisan. So one rant will be ostensibly praising Trump or talking about Trump in a humorous yet kind of flattering way. And another post will be over the top mocking or derogatory, which will, give me a second, become the theme of this podcast. So Trumpers and MAGA minions will follow me only to unfollow me a day or a week or a month later. And conversely, folks on the left, liberals, progressives, the libtard end of the MAGA maniac equation, they will love one of my posts where I criticize the administration or am an advocate for something like stopping this insane mass deportation idea. And then they'll follow me, and then I'll say something that insults them, and then back to the drawing board. So anyway, suffice to say that I'm winning as much as I'm losing and losing as much as I'm winning. I've created a critical mass there. For my podcast, I've created enough of a following or at least enough engagement to get the attention of the AI bots. And by that, I mean once every week or so, I get an email, which is clearly AI generated, and it comes from a PR person. My client, so and such, loved listening to Bald Ambition, No Hair, All Heart, Bald and Bloviating, fill in the blank. And your episode on fill in the blank, talking about fill in the blank, it's like Mad Libs with the LLMs doing marketing, targeting, and engagement, just the tip of the iceberg, of course. And my client would love to appear on your podcast. Now, clearly no one listened to the podcast, let alone the client, let alone the PR person. But the bots are already connecting creators with opportunities, especially in the what I would call the vendor space, right? Like the PR people are making money by hooking people up with podcast guests. And I've percolated into the system. So I'm at least that successful with my podcast. So booyah to me. So I've done that. But again, I haven't created a super large community. And I oftentimes feel like I am writing for myself, video ranting for myself, podcasting for myself. And it's cool, to be honest. It gives me infinite freedom. There's no real expectation. And I don't get that much pushback. I get hateful comments on on the video social media and on Instagram too. The hateful comments mostly come from TikTok and Instagram. And even though Instagram has so far been exponentially lower in overall engagement, I get a lot of hate in proportion. I get some hate on YouTube too. But what I've also found, just of note, is the YouTube algorithm has become even more selective and discerning. Not always in a rational way, but it's obviously keyword driven for the most part. They want to avoid too much negative froth. So they're filtering out videos that come across, at least to the robots, as too provocative or polarizing or in any way insulting to a particular ideology or people, even if, again, my argument is more nuanced and I might be joking. Just as people have a really, really hard time understanding or discerning irony and cynicism and humor when they see it, the bots are 10 times worse than that. So anyway, that's the setup here for my I appreciate you making it this far, because this is rather a long introduction, but it's my style. I like this. This is what leads me to the use of abuse, because I'd like to zero in on one particular video rant that I did just last week. It's only about a week old. And it's me in my kitchen, so you see the blinds. I'll put a link in the description to this thing. It's just so much fun. And on TikTok, I've got about 5,000 views of this thing. And on Instagram, let me check. I have currently 16,900 views, which for Instagram, for me, is, I think, a record. That's my viral Instagram video. And here's the interesting part. I've got only 87 likes out of nearly 17,000 views, which is statistically very low. And I've got a record 343 comments, almost all of which are incendiary, visceral insults, which is wild. And that's really the source of my little podcast here. Now, what was this video? It lasted about a minute, and I placed, instead of captions, which TikTok doesn't even let you caption a video under a minute, I don't think. So I couldn't even really caption it. It's kind of cool that I didn't. But what I did was I wrote on screen, in just white on the background of my blue polo shirt, "Trump will go to war because he didn't win the Nobel Peace Prize," which is funny. I think that's funny. Just on the surface, if you read that, Trump will go to war because he didn't win the Nobel Peace Prize, that's funny. Didn't come across that way. So I'm in my kitchen. I'm wearing a blue polo shirt, a light blue, kind of a bright light blue polo shirt. So make of that what you will. I'm the super libtard here. I'm bald. I'm still bald. I've got perhaps slightly excessive eyebrow growth here. It's not a unibrow, but it's like you got the actor Levy kind of eyebrows going on here. And again, it's brief. And the simple setup is that now that Trump lost the Nobel Peace Prize for 2025 to a Venezuelan, he is now going to take us to war against Venezuela because he didn't win. That was it. That's it. That was the video. And again, I'll put it in the comments here so you could check it out if you're curious. Now, what's relevant for my bloviation now is the onslaught of insults that I got. And I'll just read a few. They come in different flavors. There's the ad hominem attack. I got attacked for being bald, for being old. Those are two. I got attacked for having yellowy teeth, which, I don't know, I guess they're kind of yellow, but people are used to just shiny whites in media, right? And probably from influencers who spend a lot of time with cosmetics. So I got old, I got bald, I got yellow teeth, and then they hit me for being a libtard dope jerk. So again, I'll go through a few here just for our amusement. The other thing they pointed out is that the Venezuelan woman dedicated it to President Trump. So that negates the argument for some reason. And that the applications for the 2025 Nobel Peace Prize already were passed by the time Trump did what he did. And of course, since he's facilitated the hostage deal, and give credit where credit's due, that's worthy of its own podcast, of course. So here's just a few. What institution are you speaking from? Mental health is important and you need some help. Are you smoke lots of marijuana? Boy, your TDS is really showing. That's Trump derangement syndrome. Do you believe that, or are you paid to say it? I bet you have no life or kids, just a lonely old man. Creepy. Do your children know you have a boyfriend? Then I get, release the Epstein files. Release the Epstein files, which is odd considering the approach here. I've got change your tampons. Hopefully Trump gets Maduro overthrown. So that's a good one. That's kind of like, I'm a pussy. But this guy is like, hey, a war would be a good idea. Look, another woke, white, liberal, beta male making an ignorant statement. Did you ask your wife it was okay, or your mommy, to make this social media post, I don't want you to get grounded? What a liberal DB. I'm assuming that's douchebag. Could you show the world that you could be a bigger douche? TDS, Epstein files. I bet you have a low IQ. Obviously, you have no idea how embarrassing you are. Hey, rabbit teeth, why do you feel the need to be a dick? The person who won dedicated it to Trump. The whole world is grateful except your carrot-eating ass. Special kind of stupid, you probably took the short bus to school. And my ass wipes itself. What an absolute idiotic statement to make. Stop crying, Karen. Don't be an idiot. And the list goes on and on. Now there's over 340 of these. I just scrolled through a few of them. But my point I'm making here is the use of abuse. Clearly, I was joking. Trump will go to war because he didn't win the Nobel Peace Prize. Ha ha. It's taken literally, and then everyone piles on. So you get a tipping point here where you get a few dozen people insulting me, and then it's fair game, and then everyone joins the party. They're pissed by my video, and then they go to the comments, and then they go wild because they see their brethren are already throwing it down. I get it. I also get that I put MAGA as the hashtag, one of the hashtags, so I was ready to bring it on. I was eager for this in its own way. And that's part of the fun of social media, is to pile on, leave mean comments. But here's the thing. When I first started this back in December, I got comments like this, especially bad teeth and ugly complexion. And it scathed a little. I kept going like a juggernaut, but it kind of hurt just a little bit. I was like, oh, my feelings. And I was reminded of what my friends had told me, what family has told me, that I could dish it out, but I can't really take it. And usually what happens when I get attacked in whatever form, I tend to be avoidant and dismissive. So in the attachment theory schemata, I am the avoidant one in relationships. I don't like confrontation. I could rationalize these confrontations as being a waste of time and withdraw. That's my type. That's my emotional reaction formation. I grew up with crazy parents, pretty much an only child. My sister would visit from Venezuela, but it was for summers. And I spent most of my childhood alone in my room in a fantasy world. That's my happy place, and it still is. So, real people in the real world saying things that I don't like, well, I just snap my fingers like Chance the Gardener and they go away. That doesn't work in the professional world. It doesn't work in relationships now, does it? And then part of that reaction formation, that survival strategy for me has been just dismissing this stuff or taking things too personally. And what this onslaught does is really a milestone for me in not giving a shit. And I say that with a depth of sincerity and honesty and transparency. Just as I'm honest of sharing my weaknesses, I'm honest of making some progress here. I get this tsunami of hate, personal insult, ad hominem attacks, especially the stupid part. People are saying I'm stupid. And I've heard lots of insults throughout my life, and just the one that never stuck was stupid just because it's not true. I'm not that. And you could interview or assess everyone that I've worked with, and people that I've known. And stupid is not in the description. It could be a bunch of other things, but you will not hear from anyone that I'm dumb. It's usually quite the opposite. They might think I'm distracted. They might consider me lazy in ways. But stupid? No, people think I'm smart for whatever it's worth. And I have a certain kind of intelligence. It's an intelligence of being able to weave stories together and turn complicated things into a simple dramatic narrative. I think I'm very, very good at that. And I'm good at understanding stuff. I might be dumb at certain things like everyone else. But when you talk about intelligence as this sentient being with an awareness of stuff, pulling it together and processing it and being able to throw it down and throw it back, at least in terms of a cognitive kind of construct, a point of view, an intelligent point of view, a dimensional one, I think I got that. So I've got total strangers here in droves telling me how stupid I am. And then even the physical insults, the yellow teeth, the bad complexion, and the ageism too. None of this bothers me. And if nothing else, they kind of toughen me up in ways whereas before there was heightened sensitivity and this feeling of wanting to just run from the conflict. And now I'm getting this savory, spicy kind of lust, albeit from my own blood in the water here. And that's so refreshing and joyful. It's really a major milestone in this trajectory that I've described as a content creator across all these modalities. And I think I'm just kind of tapping on the tip of that iceberg, to mix metaphors here. Just as I've learned to build confidence early on, these early videos, sometimes I notice, I haven't really watched too many of them, but when I do, I sometimes don't look at the camera, my eyes wander. And sometimes I've put on like a fake voice for my early stand-up ones. Like I feel that I should be a personality or persona. And what I found is that there's almost no difference between the persona that I have when I rant in my kitchen about a certain topic and the persona that I have in a air quote stand-up role. They're one and the same. And if you look at all the great stand-up comics, Chris Rock, Louis C.K., Sarah Silverman, they're really just themselves with a microphone in front of a bunch of people expressing their opinions. Seriously. And I think you have to go full circle with that. I think every artist becomes someone they're not because they feel that the someone that they start with is just an everyday somebody or nobody, And then to be an artist, in air quotes, you need to transcend, you need to transform, you need to become Zarathustra. You need this exercise in self overcoming so you can basically come back down to do what you think you need to do. And that's all bullshit. It's really a matter of eliminating the obstacles between your ideas and your passion and your capacity to express it in an unambiguous, really uninflected, and naturally dramatic kind of way. And I'm learning, I'm getting better at it. I have my moments in either direction, and maybe I could use more professional production, but I think it's progress. I'm getting it. I'm getting it. And as I bloviated in another podcast I did recently, Don't Be a Picasso hole, where you have a choice as an artist, really, or as a potential artist or a fledgling artist. You can go the Picasso route of just working hard each and every day at your craft. You just do it. You just crank it out. There's going to be good stuff you make and shitty stuff you make. It's not about the individual output, the individual video or blog or podcast or even like essay or book. One page sucks. You just keep going. It's about living the life. Picasso lived the life. He couldn't do anything else, and all that manic energy went into just creating stuff. He was addicted to it. And then you have the asshole who sits in coffee shops talking about Schopenhauer, as I described. And I know both kinds of people. And frankly, for years, I was more toward the coffeehouse Schopenhauer bullshitter with the excuse that I was busy, that I had a family to raise and I had a job to do. And it was hard for me. I didn't like my own voice, which in retrospect is true. You need to learn how to love yourself, I guess. But you need to stop making excuses, of which the number one is you just don't like your own output. You don't like your own output because you don't want to output for whatever reason. Whatever's holding you back is holding you back. And finally, when you break through, it becomes patently obvious that you just do it if you do it. You're an artist if you create art. You're a Picasso whether or not you have talent, if you just keep doing it. Chances are, if you keep doing it, something will stick, especially these days. The grand irony of all this stuff, and I've mentioned it in another podcast series called The Wall too, is that there's just so much goddamn content out there that it's hard to get attention and notice. But there's so much goddamn content out there that the long tail is so long and so nuanced that you don't even necessarily have to get good at it. And as evinced by the styles that are on TikTok right now, going back to the badly placed camera and the misspelled captions and the frothing at the mouth, talentless bloviators, it doesn't really matter. You could just build a following by sheer momentum and just connecting with people viscerally and emotionally. If nothing else, I err on the other side. I'm too intellectual. I'm too nuanced. I'm too self-focused and too self-centric. That's the other thing. I love sitting here talking about myself, and ostensibly it becomes universalized by my best practices become your best practices, and my overcoming of my Achilles heel of not being able to handle criticism and abuse is something that everyone can learn from. But there's a different style to this too, where you're inclusive from the start. And I tend to be self-centric this way. And even my narratives tend to be claustrophobic, like my science fiction book is laser focused. It's not for everyone. It's my own cup of tea. You want some? You want to smell some? You want to taste some? You want to buy some? I'm confident that just with persistence, it should reach some kind of critical mass. Has it yet? Well, it depends on how you define critical mass. I just know that I love it and I'm learning from it and I'm thankful and I feel blessed for it. And this milestone with this video epitomizes that, in a sense, I have arrived. I've arrived. I've posted a 1-minute video that triggered the shit out of 17,000 MAGA people who were deeply insulted that I insulted their guy. And I did it in a way that I thought was funny as hell. And maybe in retrospect, had I done this as a stand-up instead of a kitchen rant, that I would have had the mic and the microphone and the fake mic and the fake background, they might have taken it a different way. But I've posted stand-ups before that were taken literally too. I don't think it would have made any damn difference. So what does persistence do? And what does it accomplish to finally overcome your fears? And in this case, get over this hurdle of being avoidant when it comes to abuse and criticism. And I really feel that this milestone helps me jump on through to the other side. It facilitates and encourages me to do even more of this. And I was even telling my kid, my 19-year-old, that doing actual live stand-up would be fun for me, I think. And doing it after this kind of milestone, this kind of like joyful, healthy, brutal speed bump of 17,000 people telling me that I'm old, that I got yellow teeth, that I'm stupid. After that, I think I can and want to go for it, almost in a way that I'm addicted to it. It's, again, like the moniker of my anti-hero in my new novel, Beat Me, Bore Me, Don't Ignore Me. I like this kind of attention, even though I don't do it for the attention. But if I'm going to get the attention, I don't mind. And I even welcome if you call me stupid, old, and rabbit-teethed. Go for it. Bring it on. And here's the other benefit. It's ancillary, but I think it shimmies into the middle again, which is, as far as it being a real core learning here. I've so been tempted to hurl ad hominem insults at other people just because they really piss me off. And what this reveals is the weakness of doing that. You can call people names, but it does one of two things. Either they're just going to withdraw, or they're going to become further empowered to continue the fray. And I think a much better technique is either to just ignore them. I'm not really commenting on these comments or even putting a sarcastic like behind, Don't Be an Idiot by Greg B. Drew from Instagram. I just feel the hatred. Let it wash all over me. And like Tai Chi, you kind of you absorb it to the point where you could just realign the vector and hurl it back. But hurl it back in a way that doesn't make you equally vindictive and shitty. So if someone pisses me off, I understand the futility of this kind of vitriol. And that's good for me too. It's not like I do that anyway, but I mean, it's just a nice, organic kind of reminder of what this is all about. And I see my kid, who is now making amazing progress with working. He owns a car, he pays his insurance, and he's really growing up. He's becoming a man. And he's doing it outside the usual 4-year college trajectory. This is worthy of its own podcast too, which I'll no doubt do soon. But he's learning all of life's lessons in the real world. It's not like he's sitting in a classroom listening to a professor talk about events or ideas, but he's in the real world interacting with real people and enduring and conquering real obstacles. And I could tell when he talks to his former friends or current friends or former classmates from New York City who have gone on to the likes of the University of Santa Cruz, other expensive colleges where they're getting 4-year degrees in the humanities or some kind of specialty like cinematography or film. And they're just whiling away their days. They're not working. Their parents are paying $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year for them to essentially do bongs and try to get laid on the weekends, and then sit in classrooms and talk about film, talk about books. My kid is out there and he's getting punched in the face too in the real world. And what's great about this parallel trajectory, father to son and son to father, is we're both learning. It's like we're both in boot camp. His older brother is a Marine, and he conquered boot camp, and he's a U.S. serviceman. Good for him. And I think we're all in kind of boot camp. So I am rekindling the spirit of my youth and my hopefulness for really being an artist. And with that comes getting punched in the face. The use of abuse is that it's real. It's not an abstract concept. You could write the greatest book and feel good about finishing it and putting it on a shelf, but throw it out there. Have people hate it. And in a visceral, everyday kind of way, reflective of today's tools and tech, throw your ideas out there into the mix, and then trigger people and deal with it and get stronger for it and learn what works and what doesn't for you. And I think that's a glorious way to go about doing it, which is keeping it real. And we're all facing artificial intelligence right now. I've podcasted about Sora 2, the app, just recently. And we're at a threshold where the machines are doing a lot of this for us. And that's abdicating a certain amount of responsibility, not only with creativity and hard work, but with dealing with the flack, right? You can always blame the bot. Right now, bots are applying for jobs. Candidates are using bots to apply for jobs, and then the jobs are appraising candidates with bots. And that's how our entertainment is going to be soon. Like, we're going to have AI-created videos of fanciful constructs of us frolicking through the multiverse of every conceivable possibility. And then who's ultimately going to be commenting and viewing on this shit, right? Who's going to be the consumer? You're going to have the bots creating videos for bots. You know, maybe that's how AGI, artificial general intelligence, will eventually evolve as an emergent construct of just endless content feeding off of itself. I don't know. But we're at a cusp. And it's glorious to be alive right now. And it's really, really cool. I mean, I guess I picked this up late. My nephew, who's great, he's really taciturn. We don't talk that much, but I love the guy. Juan. He is awesome. He is in ways the opposite of me. He's like handy. For a while, he used to turn over houses. And by that, I mean he'd buy a house with his uncle, and then they would literally refurbish the whole damn house, the kitchen, the cabinets, the rooms, the siding, the carpeting. They would do this. I can't even imagine that. I'm such an incompetent. My father would have admired my nephew, even though they were at wit's end with each other back in the day. The grand irony of my father's racism and misogyny is that his half Latin nephew does what my father did, and in ways does it even better in terms of being the ultimate handyman. But anyway, I digress. Juan, who is awesome, I don't talk to him much. We don't have like a cordial everyday relationship, but I'm not quite sure what he thinks of me, and in the spirit of this whole rant, I'm not sure if I'm worried about it. But I think he's great. And he made a passing observation when he came to visit California a few months ago. When we're talking about my podcasting and blogging and doing all this shit, he said, you should have just started it earlier. And it wasn't a slam. It was just a declarative, totally accurate statement. As I began this rant, if I would have just activated, even on a whim during the pandemic, I could be several thousand posts in already and kind of ahead of the curve. And right now I'm entering the fray at its most packed and convoluted and chaotic time, right at the cusp of artificial intelligence, which is redefining everything. But as I also mentioned, you got to be true to yourself, and there's a time and place for everything. And maybe I just had to play it all out internally. Like you can't do what you want to do until your mind and your body let you do it. And it'll let you do it when you're ready. And when you're ready, that depends on the lived experiences that you grind through in order to make yourself, like Jimi Hendrix said, experience. You're legit. You can do it. You're honest. You're direct. And here's the essence of my rant. The use of abuse works when you're ready for it. When you're at that cusp between living your own life, your own stubborn way, and then going out there and throwing it out there and taking the heat. And in that bonfire of your own vanity and the general cauldron of the shittiness of most of the human population, that's the stuff that dreams are made of. That is the crucible of creativity itself. And without that, you are a freshman or sophomore at the University of Santa Cruz doing bongs, going to film classes, and being bored out of your mind. A cushy life isn't necessarily a creative and productive life, unless I guess you're Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz and you got that going on. There's been examples of people, at least on the surface, where they don't really seem to have tension and the genius just flows out of them. But I kind of call bullshit on that. What the hell do we know about these people? And as we've seen time and time again on social media, what you hear and what you see is not necessarily what's going on inside. So whatever. I don't know. Like Louis C.K. will cynically just interrupt himself sometimes and say, I don't know. I don't care. And I guess not knowing and not caring is another pair of learnings from the use of abuse. Just get punched in the face at the very least. At the very least, total strangers are acknowledging that you exist. And there's a perverse kind of power relationship in it too, which is I'm the one on stage. I am the fool who posted that video. The power rests with me. That's another key emotion and fact of this thing that I've noticed is even if you're up there and they're hurling tomatoes at you, they're hurling tomatoes at you. You've got their attention. And they have come to you. And with the algorithm might have brought you to them and they're resentful and they hate you. But the power rests with you nonetheless, because you had the balls, the wherewithal to actually let it out there. And they're the ones sitting on their ass as the passive recipient of your bullshit. And that's a power relationship too. And that is implicit. So they're going to fandom you. They're going to be your raving fan. Or they're going to despise you. And both are equal indicators of who's holding the cards in the moment. And that's something to think about for people who are just starting out with this and people who are seasoned pros at this. And I think problems happen in both extremes, where you're just throwing it down and throwing it out there and there's nothing and you burn out. Or you're throwing it down and throwing it out there and you pop and you're worshipped and the crowds who are applauding and cheering you on seem as vacuous and have even less understanding of you than the ones who have trashed your ass as you made your way up to that stage. It's tough. It never ends. To quote Frank Zappa again, I think I did him in the other podcast. I don't know. That guy's on my mind because like Picasso, Frank Zappa was nonstop. He was just in the studio. Like his wife said, Frank doesn't do love well. He'd be in the studio and he'd be smoking cigarettes, drinking espresso, and jamming on his Cherry Sunburst Les Paul. or on the mixing board or writing music, the dude was always cranking it out, just like Picasso. And if you're on that path and you're doing that, then his advice is good, man, which is he gives the 1-2 in terms of the devil fingers of rock and roll to the interviewer. The interviewer said, "What kind of advice would you give young artists?" And he said, "There's 2 pieces of advice." And then he gives the black metal sign, the sigil, which always has a sexual kind of connotation too. You can use your imagination. Anyway, he's like, don't stop and keep going. I don't know if it was in that order or not. Doesn't really matter. Keep going and don't stop. That's all about the doing, the production. And the don't stop is don't let them stop you. And then he puts a capper on that and says, it doesn't matter what you do, it's going to be hard. And it's going to be hard if you don't say anything and nobody comments. It's going to be hard if you throw it out there and they all hate your guts. And they could love you, and that could be its own form of self-delusion. But if you could end your day exhausted, and if you can end your day having cranked something out and thrown something back out to the world, then that was a good day. You're a Picasso and not an asshole. And maybe you could even become like a Picasso, where you can kind of do both. And sometimes you have to do both if you're still working and you're still trying to keep it together. So anyway, I just had to share my joy and revelation at triggering the shit out of people with a 1-minute video, which on the surface with an iota of intelligence or where understanding comes across as a joke. There's no joking, folks. Everything is taken very, very seriously. Just as maybe you should take your own attitude toward what you do. Not conveyed in a preachy way, but in a way where you're true to yourself. If you're going to do it all the way. I think Baudelaire said something like that. If you're going to be a whore, if you're going to be a drug addict, if you're going to be a research scientist, if you're going to be a gigolo, if you're going to be an astronaut, if you're going to be a short order cook, if you're going to be a card sharp, doesn't matter. Just give it your all. And you know you're doing something right when you put the abuse to good use. Thanks for listening. Go ahead. Leave a mean comment if you like.